and welcome to What's Your Story podcast. I'm Missy Day.
And I am Michelle Hausbeck.
And today we have a good friend of ours who is part of the What's Your Story family. He has spoken at several events. He has been on, have you been on the podcast before, Jeff?
I don't know if you've been on the podcast.
So I would like to introduce everybody to Dr. Jeffrey A. Barnes, who is a best-selling author in all things Disney. Welcome to the podcast, Jeff.
Well, thank you. I am thrilled to be here, and it's great to start off the new year by doing this.
I agree. And you're in sunny California. Is it cold down there?
It was 38 degrees this morning with frost on the vehicles. So, yes.
It's crazy. It's been so cold here.
Yeah, I had ice on my car, and the putting green was iced over all day. So, yeah, it's cold.
It's here for a month.
Summer.
Yes.
So, Jeff, so tell us what is new in the world of Jeff Barnes.
Oh, good grief. Well, let's see. We ended 2023 with a bang. I got married on December 16th.
Congratulations.
And then the next day, thank you. Flew to Walt Disney World and had a fantastic honeymoon with 2 nights at the Animal Kingdom Lodge. 2 nights, and Missy, you'll love this because I know that you heard this story a few years ago. Finally stayed at the Contemporary Resort. Blew me away. It was even better than I ever imagined or dreamed.
Yay.
And then 4 nights on a Disney cruise via their newest and latest, greatest ship, the Wish. And I mean, the past month has literally been like the best 4 weeks of my life.
Awesome. So would you say that the Contemporary Resort is that for you?
Absolutely. In fact, we're headed back. I have a speaking engagement 1 week from today at Walt Disney World, and we're spending a couple of extra days there. And we looked at, regardless of the cost, going back to the Contemporary Resort. Unfortunately, it wasn't available, so we have to, do the Animal Kingdom Lodge again and have all of these animals like giraffes and zebras outside of our balcony every morning.
Oh, you poor thing.
I know.
It's a sad, sad story.
How close do the animals get to your balcony?
They get within a few feet.
Okay.
So it's really, really, really cool. I mean, I was impressed with both. More the Contemporary, because that was a very emotional thing for me. I had wanted to stay there since I was 10 years old. But Animal Kingdom Lodge is super impressive, and having that savanna right outside your balcony it's just amazing.
Did you feel like?
Well, there's wildebeest, there's zebras, there's giraffes, and they're just right there.
Did you feel like your story came full circle in a sense, staying at the Contemporary?
Absolutely, no doubt or question about it.
So that's kind of my question is this. So is that trip going to somehow find its way into your story now?
No doubt. I write a weekly newsletter, Wednesdays with Walt, which tells stories of motivation and inspiration. And I already have written a little bit about what we had a chance to experience last month, and I'm sure moving forward there'll be even more stories. And I think the key to that is, and I can't remember. I want to say it was. The guy, he was actually did some work in Las Vegas. I just read a book about him. Anyway, he said great stories only happen to people who can tell them. And I at my heart am a storyteller, and I find stories to tell almost every day.
Yeah.
What would you say would be your greatest takeaway from the full circle of the Contemporary story?
So I think there's a couple of points there, Michelle. First of all, if you have an idea, a goal, a dream, if there's something that you want to do, like I was 10 years old, I'm on my first trip to any Disney park anywhere in the world. We're on the monorail. We go through the Contemporary Resort. I'm blown away. And I, out of curiosity, say to my parents, "What the heck is this?" And they responded with, "Well, doesn't really matter with this because it's not for us, which simply meant we couldn't afford it. And for decades, that became a limiting belief. Well, we need to stop limiting ourselves and recognize there's a reason why I was excited about being in the contemporary. There's a reason why I was curious and asked my parents. And it's because I wanted to stay there. And that's perfectly fine. And I get that at the time we couldn't afford it, but it's one thing to say, I can't afford it right now versus it's not for us. And the only limit to our story really is the limit that we put on it.
That's great. Yeah.
And then secondly, and you both know this, I had, a relationship blow up on me a few years ago, and it felt like my life and my story was over. But that's just never the case. If you trust in yourself, if you surround yourself with the right people, and if you allow time to move forward, which is inevitably going to do anyway, you can start a new story and you can actually experience a better story than the one that you're grieving and the one that you feel like you lost.
Right. Well, I mean, our life is filled with chapters, and
Correct.
no matter who you are.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I'm starting to really, and it's a cliche, um, but I finally reached a point where I'm like getting it. The past doesn't exist, the future doesn't exist. We only have today. And
Right.
so where you are today and the story that you're experiencing today, you need to fully enjoy that, fully experience that, fully appreciate it, because you can't go back into the past and the future's not guaranteed.
Mm-hmm. It's very true.
So having said that, let's talk about your future just a little bit. So what's going on with you this year? What are you working on?
Whew, well, we have a lot of speaking engagements coming up. So, we're working at, getting better at, the craft of telling stories, making sure they have an impact on the audiences, the individuals, the corporations that I am, speaking to. But above and beyond that, I'm also working on a couple of new projects, which will include a new book, hopefully by the end of the year. It's currently being put together by some literary agents and pitched to major publishers. And the core of the idea, and we're still sort of wordsmithing exactly what this will look like, is how Walt Disney was most successful by seeing the world differently and not agreeing with the people around him and not agreeing with the reality that people told him couldn't be changed. And so I love this idea of, if you think you're different, if you think you see the world differently, if you know you can do better, if you know you can have an impact and make a change, rather than running away from that, own it and let's figure out the process for moving forward and start making the changes that in your gut need to happen.
So I have a question for you. So I'm continually amazed at people that have put themselves in a box and they stay in the box and all decisions are made within the parameters of the box compared to like Michelle and I and even yourself. Um, we're always thinking outside the box. We've never been in the box. We don't even know where the box is.
It's a
So is
box.
Yeah.
so is it like, do you think people, it's like, is that learned or do they already grow up with that within themselves of the box? So where does the box start?
Well, I think it starts probably with our family of origin. And, growing up when you're a kid, and I was just giving a lecture earlier today on Martin Luther King Day, which is Monday. And I talked about how as children we're innocent and we don't know what things like racism are. Um, but what we do know is what we're exposed to. What we do know is, what the people who are in charge or those who are over us tell us. And naturally, we accept it at face value. and we go from our family of origin to the culture that we happen to grow up in. And I think between those two, there are very strong forces at play that say this is the way it is, this is who you are, this is right, this is wrong, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. And what I am really starting to recognize is the people who really make a difference and who really change our world refuse to accept any of that.
That's true.
Oh.
I hear hammering.
There's
Yeah.
your remodel happening.
We're just getting some shelves put into a closet.
What are you most excited about? What are you most looking forward to this coming up year?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with this idea of you really only make a difference if you're willing to challenge the status quo, see the world differently, and take a risk in moving things forward. Historically, I have written on Walt Disney, Disneyland, Walt Disney World, but it's always been sort of from the happy. Walt is sort of this, affable uncle that everybody liked and everybody could get along with, and there was certainly that side of it. But coming to the realization that Walt's true genius was seeing things differently and not accepting the status quo. That's how he came up with Steamboat Willie. That's how he took the risk in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's what caused him to completely disrupt the amusement park industry. And so I'm really excited about seeing where that idea can go and hopefully how it can help others have their own impact and change their own worlds.
So I know sometimes that you're kind enough to show people different things in Disneyland when they come, and you give them more, facts and fun facts and things like that. So what is your favorite part? What's your favorite thing, I should say, when you're showing people Disneyland or Disney World?
Am I limited to one?
Okay, you can have three.
Yay.
Not 100.
Good
No, I'm
answer. So, and I think you probably know at least a couple of these. First of all, there's a light bulb at the end of Main Street on the left side at Coke Corner, and it's painted half red and half white. And Walt, for all of his genius as a leader and his skills at casting a vision, he was a little OCD and had some issues like the rest of us, right? And it's an odd shaped space. Walt wanted an even number of light bulbs, in other words, half red and half white. And because of it being an odd shaped space, there were an odd number of light bulbs. Drove Walt crazy because two light bulbs the same color were next to each other. And so finally, one night, Walt went to the maintenance yard, grabbed his own bucket of paint, his own paintbrush, and painted the last light bulb half red and half white. That's how obsessive he was with the details. So again, it's great to have a dream, it's great to have a vision, but at the end of the day, the success is going to rest on your level and commitment to those sorts of details. Secondly, my favorite fun fact when it comes to Disneyland is that Doritos were invented there. When Walt was building the park, he barely could afford Disneyland, let alone the rides and the shops and the hotels. All of that gets leased out. And so the original Mexican restaurant in Frontierland was sponsored by Frito Lay. And a cast member realized that every night they were throwing away all of these excess tortillas into Disneyland's garbage. And he had the idea of, well, what if we were to cut them up, deep fry them, put seasoning on them, and then we could sell them as a snack the next day? And over time, that became the most popular snack in Disneyland to the point that in 1966, Frito-Lay took their popular Disneyland snack nationwide, and we know them today as Doritos. And then lastly, and this is why I'm glad you gave me three, New Orleans Square opened in the summer of 1966. It was Disneyland's first new expanded area. And the idea is that New Orleans is naturally the city at the end of the rivers of America. But if you know your geography, yes, New Orleans is at the end of the Mississippi River, but on the other side, you have the Gulf of Mexico. And so when you're in New Orleans Square, yes, it's at the end of the rivers of America, but if you're careful and you look in the right place, above and beyond the stores and the restaurants and even the attractions in New Orleans Square, you can see huge sails up on the roofs of those buildings, creating the illusion of a larger body of water, i.e., the Gulf of Mexico beyond New Orleans Square. And you feel those kinds of details when you're in Disneyland, even if you never actually see or notice them.
Yeah, I think that, well, all three, where I didn't know those until you told me. But I think the coolest one is New Orleans because that's like my favorite spot in there. And I never noticed that before until you mentioned it.
Yeah. And again, it's emotional, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you feel the power of that attention to detail, even if you don't necessarily notice those details.
Right.
I can't wait to go back and notice those details and some of the other ones that you've shared with us over the years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fun place, and everything that happens is done intentionally. And I think when we reflect back on our own success and maybe even our own story, when you have that level of intentionality, chances are you're going to end up with the story that you want, and you're going to end up getting what you want.
I think even to the point of like these details, when we plan things or, our businesses or our lives or something, even if it's not something noticeable to others, we know it's there, which is the important piece. And I think that's probably how he looked at Disneyland, right? Even though if the guests never notice it, I know that light bulb is half white
Yep.
and half red.
Yeah. No, I tell people all the time the reason why Walt built Disneyland is simply because he wanted it. It was the toy he never had as a child. And I love the fact that he was willing to give himself what he wanted, because in doing so, he gave all of us, the world's greatest playground. And so it's okay to want what you want.
So, why is Disney so important in your life?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think it goes back to my very first experience at a Disney park, um, Magic Kingdom, Walt Disney World, August of 1974. Yes, I'm known as Dr. Disneyland, and I'm at the park in Southern California all the time. But it really did start when I was growing up in the Panhandle of Florida, and our family went to Walt Disney World for the very first time. And I can remember stepping onto Main Street at Magic Kingdom and just instantly knowing if if there was any sort of version of heaven on this side of earth, that had to be it, because it was just absolutely perfect. And at the same time, I think for a lot of folks, I or like a lot of folks, I didn't have the best childhood story per se. And while there, I didn't have to worry about the issues that my mother was dealing with. My dad was with us, which was kind of rare, and he would end up leaving when I was 15. And so I didn't have to worry about dad being gone, or even worse, abandoning us. And, some of the issues that I had faced, even with my own siblings, none of that was there when we were at, the happiest place or the most magical place on earth. And so it just sort of became this place of, it looks perfect to me, and I can escape a reality that I didn't necessarily enjoy at the time.
Do you still have that same feeling when you go now as an adult?
Maybe not escaping reality per se, although it can in fact be that. I still get excited. We were there Wednesday night. We were there Sunday night. And anytime like, I always have something to look forward to when we're going to the parks. I, fly to Orlando on Thursday, and I'm going to be there, 5 days next week. And, people are like, aren't you tired of it? Haven't you seen everything? Haven't you done everything? And the answer is no, we're not tired of it. And I haven't seen everything and I haven't done everything. And, I think what gets me most excited, and we'll have this experience next weekend, anytime I can take someone who's never been and sort of vicariously experience it through their eyes who have never seen it before, that's just like gold to me.
Awesome.
That's very cool.
Yes.
So so a little bit about Jeff. So he's a phenomenal speaker. That's your primary thing, right? Is speaking. He's also a great
Yes.
writer. So he's written 2 books, and they're for sale on Amazon. So if someone is watching the podcast and they would like to book you for a speaking gig, or they want to buy your book, or they want you to show them around Disneyland, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, you can find me at thewisdomofwalt.com. And I would like to encourage everyone to go there. At a minimum, sign up for my weekly email. It's 100% free, comes out every Wednesday. It's titled Wednesdays with Walt. And you're going to get fun stories from Walt's life, Disneyland, Walt Disney World, probably a story or two from my own life, but all with a source of motivation and inspiration for your own life and for your own business. So again, go to thewisdomofwalt.com. You can sign up for my blog / weekly email. And then from there, there's information about my books and their availability on Amazon. And you can fill out a form if you're interested in speaking or want to contact me directly about one of those tours.
Awesome. Jeff, it's always a pleasure.
Yes.
It's great seeing you. And thank you for being on the podcast today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. And never stop dreaming, and don't be afraid to live your own great story.
That's right.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. And our guest today, Jeff Barnes, and we will see you next month.